what we're looking for going to Race Wisconsin is we're going to race both their open weight and their lightweight team. Their open weights have been racing a lot of the Big Ten, ACC kind of Power Five competition. They look like they're a little bit faster than Michigan State, so we're trying to see what the gap, how small we can get the gap, or how close we can get to them. So we have to just keep closing gaps. We've talked a lot about you don't get fast by racing people who you can easily beat. And so we're trying to see more and more of the top 20 with the goal of being in the top 20. And then I think that's really the only way to get there is to go race people who are faster than you and see if you can rise to the occasion when you race. It'll be very low. Like the question, just like on our lake, is the wind direction and kind of the conditions. The nice thing is they have Lake Mendota is bigger than Ford Lake, so they can actually set up a course going either way with the wind. In fact, in some of the we have kind of a contingency plan. If we can't race east to west, there's another spot that has a kind of covered cove that we can race north to south. So it gives us a nice ability to row either way, and that's a benefit they have in a bigger lake. But you also have the problem of a bigger lake. You can get waves that stand up much higher. There's any place you go has trade-offs. So it should be a relatively, the nice thing about a lake is it's a relatively fair course. There isn't like one lane that gets a really big flow rate. So I haven't raced there before. It might be a little bit faster just because of the wind conditions or the depth. There's all sorts of things like that can change how race courses work out in speed. So it's very difficult to like compare one course to another or one day to another, even at the same course. It's really like when we're looking at the overall, we're really comparing like what was the comparative times of the three boats that raced to each other, and then did they race someone that was in their realm at the same time. So I expect it to be just kind of normal expected lake conditions. Like there's no fast or slow. Really, when it comes to it, number one, we had some illnesses going before Michigan State race that kept some people out. They're going to be back for this weekend, so that's good. It has an effect in every boat from the 1V to the 3V. So everyone should get a little faster in general, just because the level of rowers has kind of a trickle down effect with illness. Like if someone's out of the 1V, it makes everybody else slower because the fastest person moves up. As far as technically, as we kind of get towards the end of the season, we start trying to get, our rate up a little bit. I think we were a little bit low on our rating at MSU. Not low, but we have 3 weeks to go where we're at the right spot. But as we kind of go through this next couple weeks, can we get the pace up just a little bit more? We've been working on some technical issues in the 2V that I think they kind of started to get figured out a little bit more this morning. So it's just sharpening what is already should be a scalpel at this point. It's sharpening it even finer and finer and finer. But it's never perfectly sharp. But we're in a pretty good spot. But we're trying to get a little bit better with our race plan in the 4, a little bit better technically in the 2V, some rate, or trying to get a little bit more aggressive on the rate in the 1V. Like just things we're working on every year. But we're in a really good spot to get the progressions we're looking for in this next 2 to 3 weeks. As far as seniors, at this point we've got a group of 4-year seniors and 5-year seniors. The 5-year seniors have really, been through a lot of transition of this team from, even though they were really recruited my second year as a head coach, we really hadn't gotten the improvements we'd been looking for at that point. And they've really developed and matured as athletes to bring us to that point. As far as their leadership, This class has some of the best leaders that I have had ever in coaching. There have been a couple times where I've watched athletes give up a little bit of their own accomplishment to make sure more people got a better result. And as a coach, like, that's invaluable. Giving up a little bit of you being the best to make sure other people pass or meet the fitness standard or whatever. You know, one of our seniors a couple years ago, we were doing our initial run test, like, asked me if they could, like, they knew they were going to pass the test by a minute or two, and asked me if they could just run a pace lap and finish, you know, it was 3 miles in 30 minutes. If they could finish at 29:59 and just make sure everyone knew where the pace was. And like, that's a level of leadership, because they're helping the people that are close get past that little bit and get to the next step that is tough to make sure happens with the next generation. And I think they've also done a good job of setting up the next group of leaders with the sophomores and juniors to take on those mantles, and that it's not just about who's the top of the record board. It's also about, are you making the people around you better? And that's more invaluable than, I would even say, the fastest person you've got.